Welcome to You Be the Judge. Hi, Judge Gloria Barber and Marilyn Pierre, who's running for Circuit Court Judge of Montgomery County, Maryland. Wow. We had a little trouble getting on, but we're here, we're alive, and we're happy, and we're safe. And I sound so much better from getting over COVID. I'm still positive, though, after being rechecked a day ago, yesterday. So, but at least I don't...
Well, we're glad you're feeling better.
Yeah.
And we're glad you're getting well, even though you might not be at 100% yet.
Thank you. We have Marilyn Mosby. If most people don't know, here in Maryland, we have... she's in Baltimore County.
No, Baltimore City.
Baltimore City.
Yes.
And she is our... I don't know why I want to say district attorney, but she's not district attorney. She's
state's attorney for
Baltimore City.
Baltimore City.
Baltimore City.
Did you introduce Judge Barber yet? I did. Remember. You did?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It was before you.
Where am I today? Oh, okay, that's why.
She's
sorry.
She's Baltimore City State's attorney. She's been in the job now for how long?
Probably 7 years.
Yeah, because she was reelected.
She was reelected. Because this is her second term.
Yes.
And she's about ready to go into another election. She'll have to go in June, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
This past 2 years, they have...
Longer than that, I think. I've been hearing rumblings longer than 2 years.
Well, but there's been rumblings, but then there has been investigations where they were unsure about the money she used for a home she bought as real estate. She bought real estate in another state, Florida to be exact. And they didn't like that because they thought maybe she could have used money that was not legally hers. That's the speculation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. I there's a video that Roland Martin, what is a clip of what Roland Martin did when he interviewed her lawyer on this, and I think it's going to be quite interesting if we listen to it and if we watch it, and we could then get some more information about what it is that is actually happening. So if you give me a moment and we could share screen, I could share screen, and then we could start from there. Is everybody ready?
Yep, everybody's ready.
So let's see.
A federal grand jury has indicted Baltimore City State's attorney Marilyn Mosby on perjury related to a COVID financial hardship withdrawal and a false statement on a loan application. According to the indictment, Mosby requested a one-time withdrawal of $40,000 from her city employee retirement account. The indictment states that Mosby had not experienced adverse financial consequences stemming from the coronavirus. How do they know? She's charged with 2 counts of perjury and 2 counts of making a false statement. Her attorney, A. Scott Bolden Jones, is right now. Scott, the feds had been, we've had you on before, and the feds had been looking at all sorts of things, taxes and all kinds of different stuff. So I'm just curious, is her money,
exactly,
is $40,000 her money, and they are saying she didn't establish a hardship to be able to withdraw her money?
Because they allegedly argue that her salary was not affected by that. But let me tell you something about that statute. That statute says if you've been affected financially in any way, and remember, Marilyn Mosby had businesses, if you will. And so those businesses were in the travel space, and they were affected by it. And her accountant urged her to take that money, and she took that money and built or bought at least one home, maybe 2 homes, with her 401k money that she had access to.
Now, Marilyn Mosby, she didn't apply for a PPP loan.
No,
so
this was her own 401k money.
Right, she didn't go for a PPP loan. She requested her own money.
Exactly. And then with the perjury statements, you remember last time I was on, I said they would not tell us what the perjury were or the statements were before they indicted. How can you charge me with perjury and not tell your defense counsel these are the statements we're looking at? Well, when you look at the bank statements, and it's been clear, her husband, as well as the bankers in this case, knew that she didn't know about these tax liens that were out there. In fact, she never received a copy of the tax lien, but her bankers even know that she didn't know about the tax lien. They were told after the fact by us, and they had no problem with adjusting the loan whatsoever. And then look at the indictment. What's telling about the indictment isn't what's in there, it's what's not in there. And what's not in there is criminal tax evasion or any criminal tax related charges that they originally argued that they were looking at. That's what the one meeting we did have, that was the focus of that meeting. And over the last 3 months, we've asked to meet with the U.S. Attorney for Maryland, the new one, African-American Democrat, and he has refused to meet with us. The team has refused to meet with us. Had they met with us, we could have certainly given them exculpatory information. Had they put her in the grand jury or confirmed that our exculpatory evidence that we have was gone into the grand jury, we certainly could have avoided all of this. So very disappointing on the part of the prosecutors, federal prosecutors, but we are energized, and she is energized to prove them wrong and to prove her case and to provide facts, because this was her money. This was not public money under any circumstances. This was not PP money. And so the government's going to have a hell of a time trying to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, and we're ready for that fight.
And last time you were on, the U.S. attorney who was leading the investigation, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he give to her opponent in the last election?
Not only did he give to both of her opponents, but the DOJ's professional responsibility division said they refused to act and remove those prosecutors. Now, in the interim, they sent an email to me in regard to my protest of them leading the department later, and indicated that it was okay for them to give money to her opponents because they were candidates of color, and therefore there could be no racial animus. That's like saying I got a black friend, so I can't be a racist. But they put that in writing to me. They then tried to pull it back because they forgot to take me off the email chain. They were sending it to the U.S. attorney, and I told them, too late. And then I explained to them about their white privilege and all that it meant and how embarrassing and offensive their statement to a black prosecutor was in that case. That's fact. They put it in writing.
So again, they are alleging that the perjury part. Obviously, so they're saying that she lied on a loan application.
Yeah, what she did was every loan application says, tell us all your debts, have you paid all your taxes, and so forth and so on. And as far as she knew at the time on both of those loan applications that she didn't owe the federal government any money. Her husband has sworn out in an affidavit to that effect that he did not tell her. And the bank knows that because she told the bank after the fact that she did not know. Her husband told the bank that she did not know. And so now the bankers knew, and they didn't want to do anything to adjust the loan. The loan was performing. And so it's unclear how the federal government or the federal prosecutors are going to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. She's indicted now, and now we fight, and the fight will continue.
Scott Bolden, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you. By the way, this is the first interview I've done since that indictment came out, because I want to be first on the Black Star Network.
All right.
Okay, so the interview is done. What did you guys think?
Well, I thought that the interview was a little helpful. Mm-hmm. I think that overall, however, there is a lot that's involved in this particular situation. From my perspective, and again, this is my perspective, mm-hmm. I am concerned about smear. I'm concerned about trumped up charges. I'm also asking the question, how do they know about the financial condition of her businesses? I'm also concerned about why the team refused to meet with her. And I'm also concerned about, the steps and the overwhelming effort. See, this is not a situation now, first of all, let me preface this by saying we don't know the whole story. None of us do. All we're doing is relying on media clips. And based, I know, on my own personal experience with my case, I know for a fact that the media does not give you the whole story. They never do. And a lot of times the information the media feeds you is wrong. And a lot of times the information that the media feeds you is has a spin on it. And most of the time, the spin is part of the smear. Now, when you look at the indictment itself, it's clear to me that this is a powerful smear. They put right up there perjury. They put right up there fraud or false charges or something to incite the public that this public official has been federally indicted on something that's associated with dishonesty. And keep this in perspective. These are the same tactics they used against Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
If Shirley Chisholm. I mean, we could go on and on about
it's a
the number of people
thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is a discredit thing.
Mm-hmm.
You will see FBI documentaries in which J. Edgar Hoover flat out called Dr. King a moral degenerate in front of the whole world. Didn't care either. So, this is oftentimes part of what they do. And some smears are extremely effective to the point that there's no comeback from some smears. Some smears are so deep, they're so impactful that even if you were acquitted, you can't come back from that. I mean, you're out there first and foremost as someone who's been federally indicted on perjury charges. So so that was a very purposeful and intentional act on the part of the prosecution. And before Eric Barron arrived, they had this case cooking. But that's where I deviate to or pivot to the issue of trumped up charges, because when you look at how the Office of Prosecutors prosecute, there are a whole lot of people that are missed in this, and we don't even know the whole story. Now, for example, you watch this dynamic. Mayor Sheila Dixon prosecuted, and they've put $1 million or more in prosecuting her over some $20 gift cards. That's just as ridiculous as you spent my tax money like that, really? And then Mayor Catherine Pugh prosecuted and plea bargain and so on. Now, the thing about Mayor Catherine Pugh, there are other folks, other politicians.
Well, we have to say to people who don't know that these are Baltimore City folks as well.
These are Baltimore City mayors that I'm speaking of. And when that whole Mayor Catherine Pugh, I was very disappointed in how those things went. Swift bam you out of office, because it was more like, to me, like the Baltimore Sun was behind pushing this in a very negative way. Hey, did you see any Holly books? Blah, 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 blah. Did you have Holly books? They just kept egging it on and egging it on. And see, nobody stopped and said, well, why would such and such daycare have an accounting just like that, just because you asked them of books? So, but the deeper issue is there were other people on the board that were self-dealing. And I'm still waiting to hear when their indictment is going to drop down. Mm-hmm. That's part of white privilege right there. Where are the rest of the indictments? Because that case preceded the Marilyn Mosby case. Where are all of those indictments? And so, that issue alone is one that is of concern. And, now the team refused to meet with me. That's very, 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 very important. And I'll tell you why, because that is very, very similar to a situation involving myself. Because when they tried to trump up charges against me, they denied, bypassed established protocol. I was entitled by regulation to meet with the commission before they even proceeded with an investigation and charges and all this kind of foolishness. Now, if somebody wants to really, rev it up, they're not going to follow established protocol. They're going to do exactly what they did here. And to give you an example of white privilege, there is a public opinion out there that a white male judge, and let's call him Judge Hannah, who is deceased now, but was on the DC Superior Court. He was accused of participating in some type of protest, and it was a violation of the Code of Ethics. Now, instead of removing him from office, they gave him this so-called meeting with the commission before the commission decided to discipline him. And you know what? After he explained his circumstances, they decided on no sanction at all. No. So he went back to his job, put on his robe, and kept going, until he died. And,
I was just going to say that there's also some situations where if the allegations are strong enough, they allow the judge to retire rather than go through the whole process.
Well, some of them escape prosecution by doing an immediate retirement so that they're not subject to the code as long as they're not actively in office as a judge. I've seen that happen. Mm-hmm. But I bring light to this situation is because there's an enormous white privilege that's attached to this meeting before the commission and having that opportunity and not being deprived of that opportunity. So this failure to meet with the prosecution team who refused to meet with Marilyn Mosby before they went public with the federal indictment is a major point. And
because she is not only known in Baltimore City or known in the state of Maryland, she is known, at least nationally, maybe even internationally, because she was part of the group of progressive state prosecutors that got into office a couple of years ago. And the press all over the country covers what she and I think the prosecutor from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as well as the prosecutor from Chicago, Illinois, I think. So they cover all three of them as in, okay, these are a group of progressive prosecutors. This is what they're doing to alleviate some of the problems.
Well, the reason why progressive prosecutors get that label of being a progressive prosecutor is because they will go after the police. Mm-hmm. And that is how they're branded. But everybody has to be extremely careful of how the media feeds you stories, because they'll feed you a lie. They will feed you stories with a spin on them. And I've seen it done over and over again. It was done to me. So, you have to be very, very careful as to how the media provides you information, because it may not be accurate. It may have some type of intent, because you brought up the fact that she's a national figure. She is. So when this story became public, it was a national smear against her reputation and her livelihood. Now, let me tell you the other thing that's behind all this. It's the finances. It's the economics of it. And I say that because I sent you this LinkedIn text, didn't I, Mary Lynn?
I couldn't figure out what it was. Oh, you mean the article? Yes.
The
Okay.
article.
Yes. Yes, you did.
The Treasury chief going on the record to say the U.S. economy has never worked fairly for Black Americans. Well, that's not a surprise to probably anybody on this call here. That's like, okay, you told us something we already knew. This system is just jacked up, okay? It is. And the reason why it is because the the whole concept of knowing how white privilege works, but knowing that there's a huge wealth gap, because this story says that federal data shows white families have 8 times the average wealth of Black families. Well, that's not a surprise. And the other thing about that is the fact that it really relates to how the system is set up such that it can legalize discrimination. And let me show you how this happens. For example, she focuses on the fact that there are white families that have 8 times the average worth of Black families. Now, you look at the average municipality and you look at their workforce and you look at the composition of that workforce, and you find out where are the majority of the Black people working. Is it Public Works? Or is it someplace else? Is it Department of Transportation? Is it, so you look at that and you see those numbers. But you also look at some other things. Now, if those people have white supervisors, how is the white supervisor promoting the people in the workforce? Are they invisible? Does it take 10 years to get a promotion? You see what I'm saying? And so there's another thing that you have to be aware of. And you can work for a municipal company or work in the public or private sector. You will see how people advance, how quickly they advance. All of a sudden, they create positions just like magic. Vice president of government and ... Vice president of human resources, vice president of this, that, and the other. And here go person A is still an office associate 1 with a master's degree. You need to stop that. That's outrageous.
But we could go over and over again about what the problems are. Did you notice any solutions as to, because she's saying, here's the problem. And I think we have talked over and over and over again about what the problem is. I don't think anybody here would disagree that there is a problem. Does anybody disagree that there is a problem? So we all know that there is a problem. What solution does she have?
There are easy solutions, and I'll explain.
No. Yes, you're right. There are easy solutions, and we're going to talk about that. But what I'm saying is that the people who are trying to gain points, hey, Martin Luther King Day was this week. It was this Monday. So yeah, there's a problem. Yeah, give us some points because we're recognizing there's a problem. But then they never take the next. And you know that they're easy solutions because you're going to tell us right now.
Oh, okay. some of the easy solutions is to speak up. I had the pleasure one time, well, not maybe one time, but a few other times. Whenever there's a budget meeting and somebody got some leftover money to a full-time position, or, so if you speak up, then all of a sudden, that person who was invisible is no longer invisible. That's right, straight up at you, and you can mobilize that and further advance that. Sometimes when you have opportunities, there are opportunities in the workforce where. And whenever you have a situation where people try to be oblivious to legalized discrimination, you have to make kind of something, just like, for example, I just saw a clip in which Oprah Winfrey, at the time that she was working for WJZ-TV Channel 13 in Baltimore, she was working with a co-host by the name of Richard Scher. And they co-anchored the noon news together, and they also co-hosted a talk show called People Are Talking. And she went in this clip after her work experience there, and she admitted that she went to the manager because she found out that Richard Scher earned far more money than she did, and they were doing the same job. And look, at that particular time, now I will say it was somewhere in the 1980s because I interned with Oprah Winfrey at WJZ-TV Channel 13 at the time she was co-hosting and People Are Talking was unfolding. And she admitted that manager specifically said with no shame, the reason why Richard Scher is earning $50,000 or $20,000 more than you did is because he has a family. They just went all out and said that. And he also said, do you have children? Do you have a house? Do you have, went all out on the record like that. And so that was their response. They boldly acknowledged that they were legally discriminating. Now, here's the issue here. They should stop all of this legalized discrimination. That's one way you can dismantle racism, because companies get by with too much legalized discrimination, because that manager who told that to Oprah Winfrey will probably go on record in the court proceeding and said, I never said that. And, that'll make that a disputed fact, and it leave it up to the court to decide and weigh the credibility of the witnesses. But Oprah thought made a very credible statement that this actually happened to her. And he made no bones about the fact of this pay disparity and the fact that and people thought like that and did things like that. So this is an issue.
This is not an issue of the past. I mean, to this day, we're still having the same issue. You might not get somebody who's as brazen as saying those exact words, but they couch it in other words. Hey, we can't afford it. It's like we need this equipment or that equipment, and we need this, that, or the other. But it still comes down to, people are watching the show because of him and not because of you. I mean, all kinds of excuses.
I want people to listen to their thoughts. And I think when Judge Barber was talking and the Roland Martin show was playing and the attorney was talking and we're talking about Marilyn Mosby, do people listen with their thought? Are they listening to themselves think about what's being said? And that doesn't happen. And it's sad because no one's ever taught how to critically think. This is why the news media, this is why Edward Bernays, prior to even World War I, was able to get women to smoke more, right? get people to buy a car, or whatever the influence of a commercial has done, you have been mentally studied more than you have been mentally taught. So many people are outed by their own personal feelings, and that creates skepticism only for themselves to be caught in a box. And I hope people understand what I'm trying to say, is that no matter what news, information, or thoughts, even here from this show, You Be the Judge, what are you listening with? How are you listening? How are you understanding what is being, what you're taking in? Is it a critical ear, or is it a negative ear? Is it a positive ear? Is it, if I'm a black person, I'm going, well, this is just racism, and that's all I'm going to hear is that this is racism. This is more than that, people. This is more than that. You are being controlled by the lack of critical thinking that you were able to apply to information you heard. And it's been proven because they keep doing it. Doesn't matter if it's against an opponent you like or dislike. Doesn't matter if it's for or against. It's being used for the last 40 years easily, blatantly, easily. I don't remember when a person said, we got the news truthfully. I don't remember a time. If you're going to pull out, and I don't want to curse in the show, the whole bulldanky about Walter Cronkite spoke the truth, you're full of shit. He spoke from his personal opinion. And that's what he did. He was just never called on it. If he was speaking now in a news situation, we would call him out and understand where his biases are. Understand how...
I think that, we have to also examine this and evaluate this on how the establishment tries to financially injure and devastate people
on purpose.
On purpose, but also knowing the fact that, just as that news story I just mentioned, the white families are there's a huge wealth gap. Okay, so they go with the assumption whenever they're attacking, especially a political opponent, I can spend you or I can destroy your finances. This is a huge effort to take her down, remove her from her $250,000 job and leave her penniless. I mean, I'm just telling you straight up, this is an attempt to leave her with mounting legal bills the size of China. And this system is so poorly set up, and I'll say it over and over again, that the system is not perfect, that it is so set up so that she can spend mountains and mountains and mountains and mountains of legal fees and not win. I know in my case, I have not gotten fully vindicated, partially vindicated, but not fully vindicated. And I have spent mountains and mountains of legal dollars. Now, she acknowledged in her first press conference after the federal indictment that already she has spent over $500,000 in legal fees based on all the things that have been happening all over the place. Now, that's a huge legal bill. And they are doing this to financially destroy her. So people need to stay focused on that point.
Here's another question. And I'm going to mention people who probably they don't like it. Doesn't matter. Donald Trump, Mario Cuomo, any person, myself, Judge Barbara, Marilyn Pierre is going through this right now. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter who. It has happened to me in my life. It has happened to people I know. It still continues to happen. Here's the back question: why are they doing it, and what comes out of it? People need to ask that question. Okay, it's being done. Okay, we know it's being done. We know it happens. But somebody's getting something out of that. Someone's getting a return.
The first thing that they are doing is, number one, to poison the electorate.
Obviously, yes.
That's number one.
But what comes after that? There's got to be. Go ahead, Teresa.
I just want to say that when she indicted those officers after Freddie Gray, when she did that, I said that they were going to retaliate. That was when I said they were going to do that. So I think that is one of the reasons why they're dealing with her in the way that they're dealing with her now. It goes back, for me in my mind, to Freddie Gray. And before then, officers weren't being indicted like she paraded those officers in front of the camera at that time. And I said that they were going to retaliate.
Well, see, there's still here, and see, the response to that is there still has been no accountability for a chief medical examiner who ruled his death a homicide, not an accidental death, a homicide. Right. Homicide carries with it a specific definition. Okay, there's been no accountability. Mm-hmm. There's been no accountability for that, and so this also, to me, on the surface, appears to be politically motivated.
We know it is. But let's go back to this. Can we quantify this easily? Who believes that Kennedy was shot by one person? Raise your hand.
Well, I think he was shot by one person. One person.
You think
one
so?
person? One person shot him.
You think one person shot him?
There could have been a conspiracy to kill him by others. We're talking about JFK, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Will has either he raised his hand or he's got a statement. No, you raised your hand because you believe Kennedy was assassinated by the lone shooter.
I believe there was one guy with one rifle, one bullet, and one death. Now, who put the guy up to it's a different story.
Will, do tell me why you think one person made that shot from that window with that rifle.
Because so if there had been more, two guns or something like that, it would have leaked out. It would have come out in the 6 months after the investigation started.
I don't think so.
There were just too many people who believed that there was one guy, and so far as I know, very few people with direct evidence who say there was two guys.
Okay, so the Lee Harvey Oswald theory. Now, granted, I've also seen the other commissions who had the grassy knoll theory. I couldn't buy that. I couldn't get into that. I'm looking at Lee Harvey Oswald as the sole shooter who actually had a rifle that actually was such a sharp shooter. It aimed it at the right spot and shot the man dead.
But they had expert shooters to take that shot. 3 expert, and they couldn't pull off that shot. It was like the miracle shot of miracles. What I'm getting at is that even this information back then was skewed or not told truthfully. And I think ever since, we've been being pulled or led by our noses by agendas that only certain people who push it get something out of it, and the rest of the public suffers from it. That's the painful information that I believe is. We suffer because we're not taught critical thinking. A lot of people don't understand the things they read. They don't have the time. They're too tired. They're too sick. They're too poor. They're too black. They're too whatever to go in to figure out what else is going on when they have to get up in the morning, deal with their own kids, deal with their own life, deal with their own emotional, mental health. This is a scary world we live in, and the information keeps getting pushed out there by radio stations who get paid by this, paid by that, newspapers who writes this, writes that, and we hurt as a public. As the Republic, we're hurting.
Well, same thing with James Earl Ray, right. And who believes that the one bullet shot Dr. King.
Yeah, right.
Now I'm on the side of, I think the government was behind some of this stuff. And I'm on the side of, now how did if he was that poor, how did he get to Europe so fast? Oh, please. So I'm a little bit leery about the fact that was one sole person that did that.
So are we looking at, according to what Dr. Dyer is saying, are we looking at the media as being their entities as being PR entities, in essence?
Sometimes they're propaganda. Yes. They straight up propaganda.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Will.
Okay. If you say that everybody always lies,
no,
you're in a very tough position.
Right.
And this is an exercise in probabilities. And if a thousand people who I generally viewed as honest say that Kennedy was shot by one guy, I think you have to start with that, and work out from that.
I just think, and I don't disagree with you. I just think people they listen through emotions more than facts, and I think that's what skews their points of view in how they are receptive to other parts of information.
Well, what about the fact that if we looked at Ahmaud Arbery's death, we were looking at pictures and videos then.
Right.
I'm like, wait a minute, that story didn't match up.
No. And so how are we to proceed? Because Marilyn Mosby, she's just so much, this is a long line of long lines, right? This is such a long line. I actually think she's going to come out okay. And the reason why is because it's Baltimore City, and they get to vote her back in. And I think the majority of voters are going to support her. And I think that scares them the most.
Well, yeah, that's part of the reason why they're doing all that. They're pushing this train up the hill, if you will, against her. And so they're aware of that fact. And like I said, that's what makes it politically motivated. But you have to be careful of the system and sometimes how powerful the system is. We don't know, again, the whole story and the whole case and what other documents that they have and what other information that they have to try to build this case. It may very well be a weak case. Really, it may be. But then it all boils down to what the judge is thinking and how the judge weighs credibility.
How can she be removed?
Well, she's already lost, because if she has already spent $500,000 in attorney's fees, I mean, that's a real more than issue. Most houses.
That's right.
So this could have been money that she could have been using to add wealth to her family. So it goes back to that again. So
that's part of the deceptive practices that go on to bring somebody down. They know that people have limitations to their finances. They know that. So they go after them.
I want to add at this point as well, they're not spending their money. They're spending our money.
Our money.
Right. That's another thing.
So they've got, it seems like, an unlimited amount of funds to just...
Legally, how can she be removed? She can quit? Who can remove her? That's the question I have.
Well, voters can remove her.
Okay.
And I'm not absolutely sure statutory wise, what it takes to remove a public official, because it may vary from office to office.
Okay.
But the other way, again, is to try to the plea bargain, just like that, they did with Catherine Pugh and with, the others. But this is, it's awful. And I say this in the strongest way that I possibly can, that voters should not be fooled by what they read in newspapers. And they should not be fooled by what they hear in the media and accept it at face value and as the gospel truth.
Well, technically, we're media, so
yes, we are.
Okay,
and
so
you know what? I'm glad that I'm out here
I've got the answer to
saying
your question.
that.
Sorry, yeah, I've got the answer to your question. It says that a state's attorney may be removed from office for incompetency, willful neglect of duty, or misdemeanor in office. But he or she must also be convicted on those grounds in the courts or voted by 2/3 of the state Senate. So 2/3 of the Maryland State Senate can vote her out.
That's a tough,
even if she's not convicted.
That's a tough vote. So they got to go for conviction.
She has to be convicted, is what I understood.
Convicted.
Is that how that statute reads, Mary Lynn?
Well, okay, let me go by it again. Do you want me to share screen?
Mm-hmm.
Because that way you can, okay, let me do something else before I share screen. Let me just.
Well, that's an interesting point that you raised. But they've looked at that statute. They know that that's what you go for, the jugular vein.
Right.
Yeah.
They know that. But, like I said before, I was actually glad when I ran for office and I ran into a voter and I asked her to vote for me. And she says, I remember you. And she later followed up and said, you know what? She said that I remember that your opponent passed out this election card and they really said some really nasty things about you and said that you were a bad person and that don't vote for her. Oh, no, they said that you were in trouble. That's how they characterized it. You're in trouble. And I said, oh, okay. And so she says, but you know what? I voted for you anyway.
Yeah, and
I was
they've
thrilled
done
that she said that.
Yeah. I could think of a couple of people that they have also done that as well, and then spread the rumor. Oh, by the way, this person, is in trouble, so therefore, just don't vote for them.
Don't vote for them.
The question I have for the panel and for people, and if anyone want to put it in the comments, how do you listen? And does it help you to listen to others no matter what it is? Or do you only listen to favorable opinions to something? Teresa, how do you do it?
I'm always a skeptic.
Okay.
I just don't take it for face value. Nothing, because I've seen how the media works. And just like I said, I think they're PR firms, really. And people are paid for whatever they want the vision to be for them within the media. I think it has surpassed really working for the people. I think it's working for itself. So I don't take it for face value most of the time. I will do research.
Will?
Okay. Obviously, the press is not perfect. But a world without investigative reporters and a press, that world, which is one that we're tending to as all the newspapers get closed down, is going to be a much worse world.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm not even sure, do we even have investigative reporters anymore? Or is it just PR firms, like Teresa said? Because we know they have had times where they didn't want to print papers that was legal documents that we, the people, should have seen. And they want to keep it because they were for or against a candidate. So and these are the large papers, the Boston Globe, the Times, the Washington Post, they have done this over and over again by not printing something, holding something, letting the candidate know that they're favorable, saying, we got this, how do you want us to handle it? We know that this goes on.
I mean, you can't put a death notice in the paper without paying $500 or $600. So they're paying to get whatever story they want to get in there, as to why I'm saying this. But I've seen when they talked about the drug epidemic of the 80s and how you had on Fox 5 City Under Siege showing young black men. Then you had the Washington Post on the front page running it for weeks and weeks with young black men on their knees with their handcuffs behind their backs. Now, and then you had the omnibus crime bill passed. So that's why I can say that I just don't take it for what it is, for what they put out, because I've seen how it's been used in the past.
You also had the Post printing a whole section on January 6th, maybe 20 pages or more, with a whole bunch of well-known, well-regarded reporters out there getting all the facts on January 6th. And I read that thing and I was impressed. I was impressed by the work that the Post did.
They did a pretty good job, but then even then, it still wasn't everything. We're finding videos that surfaced after the fact that showed us people the Congress people getting COVID because they were rushed away and placed in a very tight shelter away from the January 6th insurrectionists. And a lot of people's lives were at risk as a result. And how, in the case of Representative Clyde, and I forget his last name, but, how they went through great measures to find his office. And his office is, number one, very hard to find. And, so it gave us real vivid clues that this was some type of inside job.
But the other thing, with the article they did, and I read the article of the Post didn't like Trump. So, of course they're going to do that type of information. It's almost like because they didn't like him, they really dug in, right? It's who they favor. And
that's true.
And it goes to the point. Would they have done that to a person they liked? And it's happening.
Yeah, well, now that's interesting because last year not last year, but so in 2018 during the election, and watch this, Washington Post very timely with this editorial, anti-Marilyn Pierre. Okay, so they kind of give an endorsement of Gladys Weatherspoon, who's running in a contested election on the circuit court for Prince George's County. But she wins, okay? But that endorsement of her actually possibly gave her the edge. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, that didn't stop the Washington Post for writing some targeted article about Mary Lynn and also encouraging the legislature to eliminate contested judicial elections. And I'm like, where did that come from? Because that was a very targeted and specific. And then on top of that, the Capitol Gazette turned around and copycatted and wrote the same type of editorial with the same twist to it. You got to watch these publications and how they're twisting stories and the spin that they put on things.
As this has been going on since Shakespearean days, right? That's how we got our news, was through the theater. And I think the theater is being played out on paper. It's being played out on social media. It's still theater. We don't want to do theater here because we talk about what we think, how we think it, and why we think it. That's different than theater, where we're trying to conjure up some type of affect that you get from us, so you can be swayed or convinced.
But they also do this when they write obituaries about people, and look how pristine of of an obituary they wrote for former Maryland Attorney General Stephen Sachs. Okay. And the same way they wrote an obituary about the guy that played the lead role in Mannix. There was not one piece of garbage in his obituary. Then when you looked at Gail Fisher, they tried to smear her, her reputation on a story that she was not even here to defend herself. So they do that in obituaries. Look how they wrote the obituary of Marion Barry. Okay. Right. So, you know, somebody making some actual news story calling him the crack mayor. Right. You know, all kinds of foolishness. You know, and so they make you know, so media is a very controlling thing, and we should not accept, again, at face value what they're feeding us, because there's probably more to it.
Well, then again, I'm glad we have this type of show, because we can't talk about it, because so many of us come from so many different viewpoints, so many thought progressions, that it's good to talk about this. And I don't think enough people talk about it. I don't think enough people are conversating, right? Conversing. We're coming from opinions and polar opposites and talking it over about their information, how they got it. We need to do more of that, just like why debates work. That's why debate, to hear people answer something or ask something. So before we end the show, I just want to let people know, ask yourself the question, how am I listening and what am I taking from it? Am I coming from a specific point of view or am I closed-minded view? So I hope people listen with open ears and read with an open heart. Because when we close it off, then we segregate ourselves from being connected to each other, no matter what opinion we come across.
That is very, very good, and I'm glad somebody wanted to know about the picture of Ida B. Wells in the back and why you chose that picture today.
No particular, no particular reason why today, but she's another woman, right? She was telling a story that wasn't being told. She had to get out, and it's fascinating. We're talking about news articles, but she had to start writing about lynching, about what things wasn't being told across America. And the stories were not being told. So she had to tell not her story, but the story.
The story. And iconic figure. Very iconic figure.
You know what? If we talk about this, does that consider a critical race theory? If we keep mentioning, are we teaching CRT when we mention Ida Wells? I don't want to be, in Virginia, we could probably be arrested. So
that executive order, y'all got to watch that. That executive order that Glenn Youngkin signed, prohibiting critical race theory. So what does that mean? We can't talk about Dr. King anymore?
It's touchy subject, right? I don't know. I don't want to think this is whatever.
Well, you also with Ida B. Wells, she had to get out of town really quickly because in lieu of a smear campaign, they were going to lynch her.
Oh, yeah.
Because of what she did. So she had to get out of town very quickly. Another thing because of what she was writing in her paper.
I also think it's kind of insulting that she didn't get an award to 2020.
Wow. That's terrible. But that's interesting that you said that she had to get out of town because, see, that's another tactic that they use to smear people. After the smear, they really want you to get out of the job you're in, and so that you can move somewhere else. Mm-hmm. That's another intended target. They want to financially ruin you, but they want you to move away so that you're no longer a threat to run for office. That's also part of their agenda.
I Thank you for everyone listening to You Be the Judge. We're here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Catch us next Wednesday. I know we have a candidate coming on next Wednesday. I can't remember what office they're running for.
Bernice Miracle North, and she is a candidate for state's attorney in Montgomery County.
Montgomery County, right. So we get to ask her some state's attorney, like, what does she put in this position as Marilyn Mosby? We could ask her those same questions, see how she would go about it. Again, like Miss Wells here, there's a story out there that's not being told. Do your research and tell the story. Because if not, there's lynching, there's people being hung metaphorically, mentally, spiritually, and physically that you don't know anything about. And monetarily, economically. There's lynchings going on. And they're trying to lynch Marilyn Mosby economically. So, and that's what's really going on. Thanks, everyone. You guys have a blessed evening. Have a heartbreak, and God bless. Be safe.
Recording stopped.